Today, we are diving into a technology that's changing everything. It can write poetry, compose music, and create art completely from scratch. Yep, we're talking about generative AI. We're going to go from the basic idea to the engine that powers it and what it all means for us. So imagine for a second that you could ask a machine for anything. I don't mean just finding information, but to actually create something totally new. You could give it a simple little prompt, something like, write a story about a dog who learns to fly. And this is where the magic happens. You see, a regular search engine would just find you a bunch of existing stories about flying dogs. But generative AI, it actually generates a completely unique story, one that's never existed before, with its own characters, its own plot. We're talking about pure creation here. So that brings us right into our first section. We're going to explore why this is such a different beast, a whole new kind of AI. It's a fundamental shift, really, moving way beyond just predicting things and into the world of actual creation. So what is it, really? Well, at its core, generative AI is all about creating new stuff: text, images, music, code, you name it. And it does this by basically studying a massive library of existing data, figuring out the patterns of human creativity, and then using those patterns to make something completely original. And this is where it really clicks. Let's compare it to the AI we're all used to. On the left, you've got your traditional AI, like a spam filter in your email. Its whole job is to classify things. Is this spam or not spam? But on the right, generative AI doesn't just classify, it creates. It can actually draft that email for you in the first place. See the difference? Okay, but how in the world does this creation engine actually work? Let's jump into section 2 and pop the hood a little bit. We're going to see the core components that make all of this possible. Right at the heart of all this is something called a foundation model. You've probably heard of them as large language models, or LLMs. Just think of it like a massive general-purpose brain that's been trained on a huge chunk of the internet, books, and code. It's not built for just one little task. It's built for, well, almost anything. The real game changer that made all this possible is something called the transformer architecture. Its secret sauce is a mechanism called self-attention. This lets the model look at all the words in a sentence at the same time and figure out how important they are to each other. So for example, in a sentence like, the teacher helped the student because she was confused, self-attention helps the AI figure out that she is probably talking about the student, not the teacher. It gives us a much, much deeper understanding of context. So how do you teach this digital brain? Well, it's a two-step process. Think of it like a student. First, there's pre-training. This is like general education, where the model just reads the entire library, learning about language and concepts. Then comes fine-tuning. This is like specializing in a major, where it studies a smaller, specific set of data to become an expert in something like law or medicine. Okay, so we've seen the engine. Now, how do you drive it? That brings us to section 3, you're in the driver's seat. This is all about the art of telling the AI what you want, a skill we call prompt engineering. This technology is just incredibly powerful, right? But what it gives you is completely dependent on what you give it. So the huge question is, how do you actually control it to get the results you're looking for? The answer is all in how you craft your prompts. There are a few key ways to do it. For a simple task, you can use zero-shot prompting. Just ask it directly. For something with more nuance, few-shot prompting is great. You give it a couple of examples to show it what you mean. And for really complex problems, chain-of-thought prompting is amazing. You literally ask the model to think step by step, which makes its reasoning so much better. At the end of the day, getting a great response really comes down to how you ask. Be super specific. Give the AI a persona, like you are a helpful travel agent, because that helps it tap into the right part of its knowledge. And tell it exactly what format you want, like summarize this in 3 bullet points. This is how you go from a pretty generic response to a perfect one. All right, now that we know what it is and how to use it, we have to talk about the road ahead. Let's move into section 4, capabilities and, just as important, the common risks. The range of what these tools can create is already mind-boggling. We're talking everything from articles and computer code to photorealistic images and original music. And it's getting crazier. With multimodal models, you can now literally upload a picture of the inside of your fridge and ask it for a recipe based on what it sees. It all sounds incredible, I know, but there is a very serious catch. What happens when this powerful, creative tool just makes something up and presents it like it's a fact? And that brings us to the first and maybe the most common risk: hallucination. You gotta remember, the AI isn't thinking. It's just predicting the next most likely word based on patterns. And sometimes that process leads it to create plausible-sounding nonsense, like claiming Elon Musk invented email. It's not trying to lie, it's just confidently wrong. Another huge risk is bias. These models learn from a snapshot of the internet, and let's be honest, the internet contains all of our existing societal biases. So if an AI is trained on text where doctors are usually called he, it might just keep perpetuating that stereotype, and that can amplify some really harmful ideas. Then there's toxicity. Because the training data includes some of the darkest corners of the web, these models can sometimes be prompted to generate harmful, offensive, or just plain abusive content. Building good safety filters to stop this is one of the biggest challenges out there. And finally, a really big one, data privacy. There's a real risk that the model might have essentially memorized and could then repeat sensitive information it saw during training. Imagine it spitting out a company's confidential product plans or someone's private medical information. That's a massive privacy and security nightmare. So, with such big risks, how do we even move forward safely? Well, that brings us to our final section, the principles of responsible AI. You can think of these as the rules of the road for building and using this tech.
It really comes down to 4 core pillars if we want to build trust. We need explainability so we can understand why an AI made a certain call. We need transparency about its limits. We have to build in safety from the very beginning to prevent harm. And most important of all, there always has to be human accountability for these systems.
And let's be really clear about this. These principles are not just some nice-to-have suggestions. They are the absolute foundation. Without them, we just can't build AI systems that society can actually trust or rely on for anything important. So this leaves us with a big, open question at the very heart of this revolution. For the first time ever, we have a tool that isn't human, but it can create. This technology is here, it is evolving at an unbelievable speed, and now we all have a part to play in answering this one question. When an AI creates something, who is ultimately accountable for it?